Hello and welcome to our book club. So I'm excited to discuss tonight's chapter, which is The Eater's Mind from Nourishing Wisdom by Mark David. And it's a meaty chapter. There's a lot in here, and I'm excited to discuss it with Gemma Davies. So before we jump in, let me introduce her and tell you a little bit more about our expert tonight, our guest tonight. Gemma Davies is an intuitive eating enthusiast living in Canada, originally from the UK. After 20 years of dieting, disordered eating, and a weight loss surgery, Gem finally decided to drop out of diet culture to focus on honoring and accepting her body. Gem uses her Instagram account at intuitive. It's hard to say, intuitive. It's so clever. I love it. To share with me the benefits of intuitive eating and to help others realize that they're worth more than the weight of their body. I love it. So powerful. So, Gem, would you share a little bit more about like your personal food story? I'm so glad you're here, and I'm excited to hear like from you directly. What brought you?
Thanks so much. I really appreciate you having me. So my food story probably goes back to probably when I was about 10 years old, was when I first kind of remember starting some kind of disordered eating behaviors. And it's something that I went on to struggle with for 20 years. Very much a yo-yo dieter, secret eater, binge eating, like rapid weight loss, rapid weight gain. Like I did that for a long, long time. And eventually went on to have a weight loss surgery, getting on for about 2 years ago now, and thought it was going to be like the answer to everything, and finally I would be normal and I would achieve my goals. And through doing that, I really got to a point where I realized that losing all of this weight wasn't actually making me love myself anymore or enjoy life anymore. It was like all these really quick, gratifying, like, oh my God, you look so great. It didn't really mean anything to me internally. And thank God, stumbled across intuitive eating, and the more I read into it, the more I researched, the more I realized that it could be the answer. And so I've been practicing for kind of coming up to probably about a year now, and has genuinely been the best thing that I've ever done. It's just been the most freeing and liberating experience of my life. So yeah, I love sharing about it. I talk about it a lot, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. So I'm curious, and this might be, maybe this is a hard and personal question. You're free to be like, well, I'm not comfortable answering that, Beth, and that's totally fine. But I'm curious, knowing what you know now with intuitive eating and really finding kind of that freedom, it sounds like. Do you regret going through with all the dieting and the weight loss surgery? Like, I know that's kind of hard to say, like, if you knew differently, but how are you feeling now besides like, oh, this is great? Or is there a piece of you that kind of mourns that you didn't learn it earlier?
Yeah, I always, I feel like there's kind of two parts to this answer. So there's part of me that's like, I don't regret anything. Everything in my life has brought me to where I am now. And, maybe it was all meant to happen for a reason. But there is a huge part of me that I wish 10-year-old me, 15-year-old me, 20-year-old me was told that your body's good regardless. You don't have to lose weight to be valuable. But instead, I was repeatedly fed messages that you're not good enough until you lose weight. No shops will fit you. No stores will carry clothes that fit you. You have to lose weight. Praised for starving myself, essentially. So yeah, I really do. I mourn sometimes what I feel like my life could have been, and it's not just about the weight, it's about how you feel about yourself, and then decisions that you make because of how you feel about yourself. Right. For me, I know that I've been in situations where I probably accepted things that I wouldn't have done had my self-esteem have been higher, and a lot of that came from messages that I was fed. So yeah, there are some things that I kind of wish that I had known earlier on. And I actually think, if I'm being completely honest, that if I had have been taught that my body was good, I don't know that I ever would have ended up as overweight as I was, because the way I ate then was not how I enjoy eating. Now I know how I enjoy eating. That the way I was eating then was all about sadness. It was all about finding, which we'll talk about, like those substitutes and like finding love through food. So yeah, like there's a lot of parts to the answer, but I do more parts of what I wish I'd have known when I was younger, but also believe that it's all just brought me to where I am now.
Right. Which is powerful in and of itself. And that's, I love that you use your Instagram account in order to help people that might be like 10 years ago, you know, to say there's another way, people. And it's
yeah. And a big part of like my Instagram account, you know, if you scroll back far enough, you'll see it started as a weight loss account when I had my surgery. And I made a really clear decision to not delete all of the stuff where I was like praising my weight loss and doing before and afters, because I really want to show that you can go from that mindset and that believing that you're worth more when you're smaller, to realizing like it's okay if deep down you're feeling like it's not actually making you happy. You can transition into finding something that actually may make you happier.
Yes, I love that. I really love that you've allowed that. Basically, you've documented your all kinds of progress, right?
Yeah.
Because as you've said, it's brought you to where you are today. It's not like you can edit your life out necessarily, right?
I don't want it to be a highlight reel.
Yeah, no, I think that's really powerful actually, and I'm really glad that you've done that. I think a lot of people can relate to that for sure. Yeah. So, okay, let's get into this chapter. It's so juicy. It really is. I know. So let's just jump into it. What, if you could only pick one thing, we'll talk about more than one thing, but if you could only choose one thing, what was your greatest like aha that you've gotten from this chapter?
Okay, so I actually wrote some stuff down, so I'm looking over here anyway. The thing that was like, oh my God, yeah, this is me, is about symbolic substitutes.
Yes.
And about how that creates like these desires about, you know, what we believe we need to be valuable or to achieve something. And the bit that stood out to me, don't know if you mind me reading it.
No, please.
I wrote down things like my missing pieces must be somewhere out there. So we embark on a mission to recapture our missing pieces and anything that gives us temporary experience of wholeness. The desire carries a hidden promise. If we desire an ideal body, it might be when I'm thin, people will love me and my life will truly begin. I really felt like my life would begin when I lost weight.
Yeah.
These hopes and promises are seldom in our conscious awareness. However, they reveal themselves once we achieve what we desire. So for the people who do lose weight, they may find themselves to be no more happy or in love with life, just thinner. And that, I was like, you couldn't have put it better. That's exactly how I felt. Exactly how I felt. There are some benefits to losing some weight just in the world that we live in, because life is made harder for bigger people. But this honestly just was my aha moment.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and I swear I sound like a broken record sometimes, and I'm sure I've talked about this extensively just within this book club, but like food has meaning. It is symbolic. Like you can't detach the symbolism from food. And some people have this false idea that they can, you know, and I think that's one of the things that causes such a great disconnect from our bodies and from the emotional and the mental and even the spiritual sides of who we are, like what makes us us, is because we're trying to limit food into like this one category. Like it is fuel, but it's so much more than that. So much more. And until we can start identifying and addressing those underlying issues or not issues. I mean, they're good things too. I mean, I don't want to say like they're symbolically always bad. It's just, it has meaning. And when we can identify and relate to that, then we can actually get what we're wanting and what we need from our food and our life as a whole, instead of feeling empty and something's missing all the time, because it is missing all the time, right?
Yep.
all the time. I love that part too. That whole thing. I've got like every other paragraph is like underlined.
Yeah.
Substitutes. My favorite, so good. My favorite is where he says, it is a brilliant strategy of the mind to reach for substitutes when we cannot acquire what we really want, like I was saying. And symbolic substitutes are often experienced as intense desires.
Yes.
And then, but we automatically like write that off as that's bad. This intense desire is bad, instead of saying, oh, how can I honor this? Or why do I have that intense desire? What do I really want? And it's a time to reflect instead of just a time to shut down, really.
Yeah.
Yes. Just seeing what else there was from that. Was there anything else from that section that you wanted to share? Because I could keep sharing, but I don't want to.
I don't know if I'd also written down the part that you shared. I think that was the last part that I had shared from the symbolic. Yeah.
Yeah.
There were, in the ego and fear section. I'll move on to that.
Yes, please.
I had written down about how, you choose a path that's too difficult for you. Going cold turkey on, say, for example, a really common one in our day and age is like going cold turkey on sugar. You're setting yourself a goal that really is that's a hard way to live, to completely avoid sugar. And it's saying here about how, through that withdrawal, the physical and the psychological withdrawal, you attempt it, fail, you lament in your lack of willpower, secretly proving their core belief that I am no good. And isn't that just the world of a dieter?
Oh, yeah.
You believe you're not good enough, you try something that really is not achievable, that you can't live by, you fail it, obviously, whether it's a week, a month, a year later, and then you reinforce the message of, it's because I'm useless. That's because I can't do this, because I don't have my stuff together.
Right, exactly. I'm a failure, and this just proves it. Yes, and I love that that's the problem with diets, is because there's a 95% failure rate. So you're shooting yourself in the foot.
Yeah.
And then you're like blaming yourself for shooting it's ridiculous. But we don't know any better, because that is diet culture.
Well, and I think when you're in a bigger body as well, you see all of these smaller people around you, and you don't for a second think it's because that's maybe naturally how their body's meant to be, or maybe they're eating in a disordered way. You think everyone else has got it together and you're the one who can't. So even though we know factually there's a 95% fail rate, you think, but all of these people are doing it. Why can't I? Let me try one more time.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of it like that. That's because I have thin privilege. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah.
But well, okay, hold on. I have thought of it in that way as far as like health, because I struggle more with like eating healthy. Like that was my obsession, was so that I can be healthy. And if I was experiencing some kind of illness or symptom, and other people were able to cure it with their diet, but I couldn't, I guess I had that same kind of like, but it's working for them.
Right.
So why do I still have whatever this is, right?
What's wrong with me? Or
yeah.
Yeah,
that's true. And he goes on to say, he says the only weakness was in her thinking, setting herself a goal she knew could not be achieved. And it's because fear drives us to create imaginary problems that we earnestly try to solve. And they're like unsolvable, because they're inherently not true. Like the belief of I'm not enough, or I'm a failure, therefore I need to do this so that I can prove I am enough. You are enough. You are inherently enough all the time. So there's nothing that you need to prove that, because it doesn't work that way. It's crazy.
But it all comes back to those messages that we're fed like day in and day out. It's all just I feel like it's just all a huge distraction from what we can actually be achieving with our lives. You know, even like, and I don't want to make it just about women, but even as women, what could we be doing with our lives if we weren't so obsessed with trying to fix these problems that aren't even problems? But we're fed, you know, the narrative by the world, the media, our doctors, that our bodies are a problem, when actually there's so much more we could be putting our brain power to.
Yes, absolutely. I agree 100%. And I know that's exactly right. Like the whole idea of it being a distraction. I'd written a note here where he's talking about like lasting solutions, which require self-reflection, sincere effort, like, you know, but how we're impatient and we want change now. Well, that's the distracting side of it. And I called it the shiny object syndrome. You know, that is the allure of diet hopping. In fact, I just read, I think it was Randy from, oh, stink. I totally forgot. I even interviewed her. I forgot her handle. I want to say Free Spirit Academy. I'm sorry. That's Randy. Anyways, so sorry, Randy. She's brilliant. I love her. But she recently just wrote about that she misses the magic behind the dieting. You know, that allure, that promise of if you do this, this will happen. And so like, it's like you're on a high. The first time you start that diet, you're like, all right, this is going to be awesome. We're going to get this and this. And then, and that's the distraction. And that's why when that diet is no longer giving that to you, you find another one and you find another one. And like, it's never ending.
It's so true. And one of the things that I've often spoken about with finding intuitive eating is that I almost had to mourn the dream of that dream body, believing that it was within my reach to attain this dream body that everyone keeps telling you can have if you just work hard enough, and realizing that not only is it really unlikely that I would ever achieve that, but also without being extremely dysfunctional. Right. But also that even if I did get that, it wasn't going to make me the happiest person in the world. My life wasn't suddenly be perfect. And you have to almost like mourn that, I find.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely have gone through that. I spent 20 years believing in that lie.
Yeah. I love that you call it a mourning process. So I'm curious then, if it's a mourning process, a grieving cycle, right? Did you ever get super pissed?
If you go back through some of my posts, I'm angry at diet. There was a period where I was almost like, why are people dieting? Like I was almost like mad at even dieters. I was like, why can't everyone see this? So mad about the lies. And I've come around to like a much calmer, softer, understanding approach. But I definitely went through like a rage period.
Yeah. You know, it's interesting. I don't know if it's super relevant to this chapter, but I'm going to throw it out there anyways. I just had a conversation with my friend that said, you know, one of the powerful side effects of anger is it's getting you ready to make a choice. Like it's like on your way to claiming your power. I mean, I think you can kind of get stuck in the anger and then you're not really, then you're not making a choice. But if you're in that grieving process for sure, where you're angry and then you get to a point you're like, well, what am I going to do about it? This is what I'm going to do about it. And then you kind of have some sort of resolution before you start the cycle all over again.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. Like definitely that making a choice. Like for me, it became like, you can either sit and dwell on this, or you can try and, in your own little way, support people and help them to come to similar realizations if they're at a point where they're ready. Yeah. And for me, it was about making changes in my life. I had spent all of my energy just on trying to be smaller. And suddenly I had like all of this brain power to like do other things and change my life and think about what I really want. And so I've kind of put my energies into that instead.
Which is amazing.
Oh yeah. It's like, I know for sure that some of the things that I have coming up within the next year would never have happened had I not found intuitive eating. Like 100% I know for a fact.
That's amazing. Can you tell us what? I'm just curious, like what?
Yeah, I can. It's actually kind of top secret just because I haven't really announced it to a lot of people, but I've decided to go to culinary school.
Oh,
really like fulfill a passion there, and I already kind of have plans for the business that I'm going to start, and I'll probably start it during school because it's a 2-year program. But I have always loved to cook, but I was led to believe that I was a food addict and that I couldn't be trusted around food. So it was an indulgent thing for me to do. Whereas now I'm able to appreciate food for what it is, and like the things that I truly like, and I can be trusted around food. So yeah, I would never have done that had I not found intuitive eating, because I didn't believe that I could be trusted at all.
Oh, that's amazing. That's awesome. I'm so glad I asked you and you told us. That's huge. I mean, yes, because if you believe that you're not safe with food, or heaven forbid, what are people going to think? You know, here's someone in a larger body showing up with food. They're going to be like, oh, isn't that convenient for you? Like, who knows what judgments you have on yourself and other people? Like,
there's all of those things. There's all of the like, I have been crippled with fear of like being seen with food in public, eating in public, all that stuff. There was that side of it always, but the other thing is that when you are living with such low self-esteem and such a low belief in yourself because you're constantly failing on these diets, you kind of like, I feel like I always put this ceiling over myself of what I could achieve. So if I ever dared to think, oh, this is the food industry business that I want to start, in my mind, the next follow-up thought would have been, no, but it won't work because of da-da-da-da-da. You'll never be able to do that because of da-da. Whereas now, I've realized that like I am good, I'm capable, I'm like strong, I can do whatever I put my mind to. Like it's like now I don't mean to sound all kooky, but like I feel like now my mind goes to places of like, you can do that, of course you can. Like I just have this belief in myself that I never had before.
I love it. I can't, like, my heart is bursting for you. I'm so excited. That is just amazing. And it really is indicative of how much diets can rob your life, really, your experience of why you're even here.
Yep. Yeah, I honestly, I could not agree with that anymore. They really do rob our lives of joy. I really believe that.
You know, this is interesting. I'm hoping this transitions because this is where my brain hopped to. But where he go in the food and love section, he talks about, can you imagine what life would be like if we loved ourselves as much as we love food? Now, here's my little like kind of rant. I've heard so many people that they're like, well, I have to work out because I love food too much.
Oh.
And what I hear is, you don't love food too much. You actually hate yourself. Like, if exercise is a form of punishment, it's not because you love food. You actually hate food, you know?
Yeah.
But they don't see it that way. And instead, they're actually praised for that kind of thinking and that kind of behavior. But it drives me crazy because I understand what he's saying, because I love food. Like, the idea of going to culinary school is so fun. I'll just live vicariously through you. But I love food, and part of my story was thinking like, you know, I was failing because I wasn't an anorexic or bulimic because I loved food too much, which is bonkers, right? It's crazy. But looking back now, I claim that my love of food actually kind of saved me from developing a seriously disordered relationship with food.
Yeah.
That just makes me so mad that the love of food is actually and actively shamed, instead of, like he's talking about, if we did love food for real, not, you know, everything that food encompassed, how much more fuller our lives would be, because it would just be a part and piece of our life, not like everything revolves around food because we actually hate food, you know?
Totally. And something that what you said there made me think of is when you said about how people can be shamed for a love of food. And whilst I almost, and it's not to discredit anyone in a smaller body at all, but do you know something that's always stood out for me is that it's a really common theme, not amongst all men, but it's very common that men love a woman that can eat. if you're in a thin body, they love a woman that can eat. But if you're in a bigger body, nobody wants to see you eat.
Yeah.
Because you're healthy or you're judged on your choices. So it almost kind of makes me feel like sometimes smaller women are celebrated for eating large portions or food that's considered unhealthy. But what kind of behaviors are going on behind the scenes for them to be able to keep that up, plus maintain, some people might have it naturally and naturally be slim and whatnot, but I'm sure that causes a lot of women to have like dysfunctional behaviors, disordered behaviors, in order to kind of be able to maintain that. Because if in their minds they're thinking, I've got to work this off, but so and so loves it when I eat a burger, or I don't know. I've always think that men can celebrate their women and say, I definitely know from back when I lived in the UK, it was like, oh, she can put some food away. She I love that she can eat. But I'd never hear someone say that about a bigger woman ever.
It's so, it like hurts my brain.
It's different standards, isn't it, for different people?
Well, yeah, it makes me so angry, and then it hurts my brain that people's brains work that way. But I get it though, because I admit I've had thoughts like that in the past, because that's kind of how we're brainwashed to think.
You're programmed to think that a smaller person is healthy.
Yes.
So it almost, the behaviors almost don't matter so much, because that's a healthy person, so she can do what she wants. She's just healthy.
Yeah.
Whereas if you see a bigger person, the misconception often is automatically that they're unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, exactly. Which now I'm furious about. Like, now this is my anger station. Now I'm mad for, and honestly, it's awkward and it's hard to even talk about because admittedly I am a thin white woman, and so I only have my experience, but I have so many family and friends and clients and witnessing strangers' experiences that my heart hurts for them. Not because I've experienced it, but even that makes me mad. Like, why have I had this better experience simply because I look this way? Like, that's not fair. And why do they have to hurt on this level simply because they don't look like it? It's a mind, it screws with my mind and makes me mad.
But I think you're doing what you can. I think as long as you're sharing that stuff, then as much as you may have been privileged, you're still supporting the cause, really.
I'm trying. That's my intention. That's my hope.
Yeah.
And I really, and I've talked about this before too, but really what's frustrating is that, as you were saying, like, we have this idea of not only what health looks like, but also what sickness looks like. We have this idea of, an eating disorder looks this way, but someone could be in a larger body and have very disordered eating habits, but they are not even going to get the help that they need because they don't even like.
Yep. Absolutely. And I know for sure I've been one of those people. I've been somebody who has lived on 500 calories a day, either doing that or I'm binging, which, in a smaller body, if you said you're eating 500 calories a day, you could potentially be classed as being anorexic. I don't know. I don't know the guidelines, but I think it's very, very common. Yeah. Very common.
Yeah. It's just, and it has to start somewhere. Like, we have to have the conversation so that people can untangle those false beliefs so that they can start to understand how this affects so many people. And then it's not just like isolated experiences either. That's the other thing of it. Anyways, whatever. I'm moving on.
We could go on forever.
I probably could. I know. But, and then he goes on to say, like, our experience of food is really an experience of ourselves. And that goes back to the, like, if you hate food, you hate yourself. Like, or the way you talk to your food is probably the way you talk to yourself. Or, our food is a reflection of our lives and of how we view ourselves in this world.
Yes. Yeah, I completely, if you're bad for me, like if you're having this negative guilt, shame around your food, then how you speaking to yourself. Whereas if you're honoring your body, eating the foods that make you feel great, in turn you're feeling great about yourself because you know you've honored yourself, you've given yourself exactly what you needed in that moment.
Yeah, it's totally different. And it's totally different too. Like, you could be eating the same foods, right? But the way you feel about yourself and about that food that you're eating is an entirely different experience.
Totally. And I think that's a big part of intuitive eating when you're getting into it as well. You kind of go through that. I don't like, when I first got into intuitive eating, I overate at the beginning because I was like normalizing these foods. Mm-hmm. And I found that I was, you know, my dietitian was telling me, don't judge yourself, no guilt, no shame. Like, if you want it, just eat it. And I was like fighting these thoughts and trying to be really like mindful of them. Whereas now I feel as though if I eat food that's considered like junk food or what, like, I'm so much kind, I barely pass a thought about it. So you can eat those, whereas previously, had I eaten that stuff, you know, I would have punished myself the next day, or gone even more crazy because I've ruined the day now.
Right.
Or been some kind of a consequence. I would have needed to take action after that. Whereas now it just what it is, and you move on.
Right. Well, and even like on the flip side of that, of like eating a salad, something like you typically think of as healthy, right? You know, gagging it down before because you had to, as opposed to, this really sounds good and it feels good in my body, like totally different. Even though it might be the same, it's different because of how you relate to that food and how it's reflecting the way you see yourself, and it changes everything.
Yeah, I definitely found that a lot of foods dieting kind of stole from me. Like, it made foods that were diet foods seem really unappealing to me. And I'm coming to a point now where I love some of that stuff, like love it. I could be offered pizza and I'll be like, no, I want the salad. Like, I love the salad, depending on what mood I'm in. But previously, like, the chance to eat out, the chance to have takeout, I would never have chosen the salad because that was what I thought was the good option.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's crazy how like dieting can steal that from you.
See, it's just such a life thief. It's just all right. I'm wondering what else there was. Well, okay, I really did enjoy where he's talking about why food and love are so intertwined, you know, both symbolically and just even somatically. Like, he says, eating draws us out of the mind's turmoil and into the primal somatic experience of self-nourishment. So I'm just thinking about like emotional eating, which has such a bad rep, and I will rant on that in just a second. But the idea of, like, for me, I spin in my head a lot. Like, I'm a typically anxious person if I let my thoughts continue to spin. Like, I'm in my head a lot. And so eating gets me out of that sometimes, but in the past, I wasn't consciously aware that that's what I was doing. You know, now I can make a conscious choice of, oh, you're spinning again. What do you need? And it could be food. It could be like going outside and, you know, getting grounded or taking a deep breath or something else that's physical. But like, okay, here's my rant about emotional eating. We say emotional eating, it's like diet culture has stolen emotions, which makes me so mad. This is like my mad interview. I'm so sorry.
I'm loving it.
I guess I'm frustrated because we talk about emotional eating like it's a bad thing. And that's because diet culture has framed it as a bad thing. And it's like, we are not robots. We have emotions. We have like our minds, and we're so much more than just our body. And so if you rule out emotional eating, you're ruling out like Thanksgiving or Christmas or Easter or birthdays or just girls' night out or date night, like so much good stuff that you are experiencing emotions with because food is providing that vehicle. Really, it's providing that experience for you. Or heaven forbid, you feel bad and you need some comfort, and food is the strategy that you choose to use, right? So what I say, it's kind of like with the whole, like, people don't love food, they hate food, and they hate themselves. People don't emotionally eat, they are emotionless eating. Like, they're eating to numb out. They're not eating to experience emotions. They're eating it in order to get into their body, but it's like habit driven. It's not conscious. It's not mindful. And it's because they don't know what else to do. And then they're shamed for emotionally eating. Like,
and then starts the cycle.
Yes.
But I honestly, I agree with you so much that emotional eating, I truly don't believe that it is the devil that it's made out to be. In my experience, there's like you said, there's the social part of it. There's, maybe I'm not starving, but or I'm not even hungry, but I want to eat because I'm with my friends. Like, to me, food is about community and about enjoying people.
Yes.
And there are times when I eat still, even now, being an intuitive eater, I eat because I feel stressed or I'm mad or I'm whatever. The difference now is that I don't approach it with shame, guilt, oh, look, you failed. There's none of that afterwards. And even if I only last week did I ate to the point where I felt I'd made myself feel bad. I wasn't eating at a point that I felt good anymore. I was feeling like I'd eaten too much of this kind of foods that if I have it too much of, it just doesn't feel good for me. And one of the things that I've actually just really recently observed is that historically, that kind of emotional eating, because it is so demonized, I would have felt like I needed to take action. Like, okay, right, Monday's here, that's it, I'm starting a new thing, I'm cleansing or I'm cutting out carbs, whatever it is. And I genuinely had, for probably only the second time since I've started intuitive eating, I had thoughts of, maybe I should just do some kind of just cut down on stuff. Like, let's just take it easy for a bit. And instead of acting on it, I sat on those feelings for a few days and I thought, what do I want to do? And I decided to do absolutely nothing. And I just recognized that I overate. I ate past when I felt good. And I just thought about why I did that. And I've moved on. And so it's all about how you approach it. But in that moment, I needed it. I really did. I was going through something, and what I had available to me, the affection, resources, attention, whatever it was, that was what I turned to. And it made me feel better in that moment.
Yeah. That's why if you can step back and say it's a strategy, it's a tool that can be useful. I mean, it's not the only thing. And if that is the only thing you're using, then you need to address why that's happening. But completely writing it off and then the whole shame and guilt and fear and that's not helping anyone. It makes it worse. And then not only are you numbing out, you're now feeling bad, and chances are you're going to continue to numb out. It's just, see, I'm just frustrated. It's just that's my frustrated day today. I'm sure there's so much more. Is there anything else that you wanted to really point out?
Let me have a look here. The only other thing, and I think you just touched on it yourself, was about it becomes problematic when loving food takes the place of loving life.
Yeah.
And I kind of go back to your point on that. I don't know. There are a couple of things that he says that don't, I'm not oh, I totally agree with you. When he says loving food, I don't necessarily know that it always is that you're loving food. I think when you're eating food instead of loving life, I would put, for me personally, I'll probably rephrase that. But it's true, it's a coping mechanism, but the problem is when you use it as your only coping mechanism.
Right. And he says that even earlier in the chapter, he says, where your life is spent in search for wholeness and the continued attempt to heal the wounds of separation. And so that's how I see food can play a role in that. And I talked about this earlier with I don't know, I'm blanking out probably because I'm so angry. But we talked about how like that constant drive, that constant need of feeling something, like a void, feeling like something's missing. And sometimes we try to fill that hole, that separation with food because we don't know any better. And then he, you know, he talks later and throughout this book about like cravings and habits. And you naturally crave things that you deem off limits, you know, so it's like you're just perpetuating this search for meaning when that's all found within, you know.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And that's what I love about intuitive eating, is because it's from within. It's an inside work, an inside job, because you can't find that wholeness externally. It can't be found.
Yeah. And I think there's so many people that think, and it's not even necessarily related to food, there are so many people that believe that they can find their wholeness from external things, whether it's like material possessions or, you know, having, you know, this person in your life or whatever it is. And that's definitely something that intuitive eating teaches you, is that you just have to get connected back to yourself. Nothing's off limits. You can have whatever you want, but just choose what it is that you need. And it definitely, like, for me, it has made me feel more complete in that. I'm not constantly thinking about like, what do I want but can't have, what do I want but can't have. Like, I just know I can have whatever I want.
Yeah. Which is, it's a beautiful thing too. And this goes back to the whole, like, the symbolism and the meaning of food. You know, like you were saying, you can't find that in a relationship. You can't find that in a home or a car or whatever. But all those things you can't internalize. Food is an external source and an internal source. You can, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can take it inside. And so, like, in a way, symbolically, like, you are satiating or not satiating, I'm sorry, satisfying a deep inner craving, because you are literally filling that space up, right? But then you're left feeling even more empty, and then constantly searching for more. And but I think that's why food is so unique and so powerful. And if you have a beautiful, like, healthy relationship with food, and you're, you know, with intuitive eating, and you're making those conscious choices, and that's why you can start to experience that wholeness, because it's facilitating that going inward process.
Couldn't agree more. Yep.
There, now I'm not as angry. I've come full circle. Let's see if there was anything else that was jumping at me. I thought we don't need to discuss it, but I do think it's really interesting, the seeing through the mouth. And he does talk, like, earlier about you know, that love of food as a baby, like food to a child, like a newborn, right? Food does mean safety. It does mean love, like, because that's how we communicate with our baby. And it's not until we start saying, no, actually, that's really bad and you shouldn't do that, that's when we introduce the fear and the shame behind, well, no, sometimes it does mean love, and that's okay. Here's another way it means love, you know, or another thing that means love. And our poor kids, we just screw them over. All right. Was there anything else that you'd like to touch on before I start asking you some questions?
I don't think so. I think we've covered everything that really stood out.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. We have kind of addressed some of these questions. So let me see. I circled some, but I want to. Okay. So when in the past, or maybe even now as an intuitive eater, when you realized that you did use food as a substitute for love, what foods were your favorite? Like, which specific food item represented love to you most?
So when we're talking about using it as love, so for me, that was probably, it doesn't sound very loving, but it was probably in my most, like, bingey phase of eating. And I would turn to things like chips, chocolate, but in really large quantities. And I would just, it wasn't just a case of having a few and satisfying the craving. It was like I was searching full on those foods as well.
Mm-hmm. So it wasn't necessarily a type of food per se, but more like just the amount of food. Like you just needed more.
Because I genuinely like those foods, and even through intuitive eating, I still actually really enjoy those foods. But I now just feel more in control is the wrong word, but I feel more in tune with how much of it I need before it stops feeling good. Whereas I would push it to the point where I felt physically unwell and would suffer for like a day afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating if you think about it. If subconsciously we're using food, whether it's, you know, quality or quantity, to fill our longing for love or belonging or whatever it might be, right? Comfort, all those great emotions. But when we do it in a way that then makes us feel sick or unwell, can you imagine what kind of a messy message and messy relationship you're associating love with?
Yeah. Oh yeah. And it probably was pretty reflective in my relationships as well. Like, you know, when you feel like that about yourself, when you do that to yourself, it then, to me, it very much translated in how I allow people to treat me. You know, the standards that I had in terms of, you know, like my self-esteem, that kind of stuff. Like it 100% translates. Whereas, and I could say the same now, like how I am now very much translates into the standards that I uphold for myself.
Yeah. It's just a really interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've talked about like your weight goals or your body goals. But I'm curious, can you recall times when you have chased after impossible goals that weren't necessarily related to your body specifically, but you kind of use food as your, like, as the means to an end?
So you don't mean like a body goal? So
maybe not specifically. I mean, it could be in some way like, well, I want this job. In order to get this job, I need to look this way. But so not necessarily like, I mean, maybe that's a confusing question, but have you ever had like a dream or a goal that you're like, well, if only I ate this way, or if only I weighed less, like, so it's not necessarily, do you get what I'm saying? Is this making sense?
100%. Yeah. Okay, where do I start? Throughout my childhood, I felt like my family would love me more if I was smaller, because it was constantly instilled in me that you had to be smaller. So I would go on these crazy diets. I would get praised by everyone for them, even when I was like starving, and ultimately I couldn't stick to it, and I would end up feeling like I wasn't worthy. Same thing in relationships as well. You know, I lost weight, maybe they'd be better to me, maybe they wouldn't do this, do that. You know, I go on a crazy diet. The same kind of thing. So I would use food or a lack of food to try to, for me, definitely a theme in my life has definitely been that my value is associated with my size, and therefore the more I manipulate it, the smaller I can be, the more I'll be loved and valued. Definitely. Yeah. And the same thing, I mean, I could say, you know, people will like me more at work, or, you know, I'll stand more chance. I know I've sat in jobs that I've hated and thought, I'll have to lose weight before I even apply for anything and go for an interview. I can bear to walk into an interview like this. No one would hire me. I've 100% had those thoughts throughout. Even when I moved to Canada, I remember thinking, I must lose weight before I get there, because I'm not going to make friends, I'm not going to get a job there. You know, having all of these like preconceived ideas that I just wasn't good enough to start a new life somewhere because nobody would accept me, whereas I had this like foundation of friends and family at home that was like my comfort. And I, you know, practically starved myself before I moved here, and it was constant yo-yoing. So yeah, I would say that kind of like being valued definitely, yeah. Trying to always achieve that. And actually, you know, now I can sit and think I was always valued. I was always valuable. I was always good.
Right.
My family actually loved me. They just, in their minds, thought I wasn't healthy and wanted me to be healthy.
Yeah. That reminds me of a friend of mine who, her like kind of aha moment was I hope I'm not botching this up. Sorry. If I'm remembering correctly, but she was driving in the car and she had her baby in the back, and I want to say he was like maybe 2 weeks old. Like, this is a baby, right? Like a little tiny guy. And she's driving and he's crying, kind of freaking out, and she had the thought, if I was thinner, he wouldn't be crying. And she's like, wait a second, what? Like, but that's just so, I mean, I love that she was able to recognize quickly, like, wait a second, that's crazy. And I need to take care of this. Like, clearly that's not the case. But I find it so fascinating that that's where she went to. And I mean, fascinating and like, you know, heartbreaking. But it's just the unfortunate reality that that's how our brains are being wired, because we're taught to believe that if we had this, then everything would fall into place.
Yeah.
And it's not the case at all.
No, and these are the diet culture messages that are reinforced to us time and time again. And they may not specifically say your child will not cry if you're smaller.
No, because if you heard that, people would be like, well, that's bogus. But like, subtly, that's the message you're receiving, or that you're interpreting it as. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Oh,
bless her. That's awful.
I know, it is. I lost my page now. So I'm going to take that as a sign that maybe we should be done with questions. Okay. So I'm excited to try this out with your food. I've asked you to bring a food item. And what did you bring? Did you say Kit Kat?
It is a hazelnut crunch Kit Kat.
What? Those exist?
It's like they have this new artisan brand, and it's basically like a Ferrero Rocher and a Kit Kat combined.
Oh my gosh. This is like making me really excited. I've never seen that before in my life. I'm gonna have to have you like ship it to me or something.
I can do that.
Looks amazing. I'm very jealous right now. Okay, so how do I want to do this? What I would like, is it split into two, like a normal Kit Kat?
Yep.
Okay. So go ahead and open it up. Yep. And what I'd like you to do is, with one, well, I'm not going to make you eat two because that might take a while, and it is awkward eating on camera. So I'm not going to put you through that extensively. But I want you to talk to your food as if it were you when you were 10. Like, what were the messages that you were getting if you were to eat that when you were 10?
So you want me to say?
Yeah, say it, like talk to it as if you were like playing out what you would hear as your 10-year-old self, or as you would interpret things, as if that Kit Kat was your 10-year-old back when you had those same thoughts and feelings.
So like, you're bad for eating this.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of, you're bad for eating this. You're unhealthy. Mum will be mad. You're eating this. What else did I have thought? Hide the wrapper. Don't let anyone know that you've eaten this. I'm trying to think of what else I would have thought. Probably just that, I don't know if I would have consciously thought it, but I would have felt you can't control how you eat. You eat too much. I probably would have been thinking things like, why, my brother is called Anthony, why can't you be like Anthony and not be interested in this stuff? I'd say that's probably pretty much what I would have been
Okay.
thinking.
Okay, so go ahead and take one bite with those kind of thoughts. Just one bite.
One bite.
Close your eyes, take one bite, and like, how does that feel?
Doesn't feel as good as it usually does to eat one of these.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So now that you know differently, you know better, you're an intuitive eater, you love yourself, and you know what you're capable of, what would you say to this Kit Kat version of yourself now?
Okay. I would say you're good regardless. Your body is good at whatever size it is. You are valued. You are valuable. You can do anything you want to. This food does not define you. This is a very yummy Kit Kat. You can enjoy it if you want it. Your size does not define your health. And just that I accept my body. I accept it. I don't know if I'm at the stage of loving it, but I accept my body and I accept who I am, and I'm comfortable with that.
Oh, I love that. Okay, go ahead and take a bite. Yep.
Finish the rest of it.
Yes, please.
So much better.
Right? Does it taste good again?
Seriously, I'm shipping you something really good.
Well, thank you. I'm really
that's a good exercise.
It is, and
it makes it more enjoyable.
Thank you. I was just going to ask, was it more enjoyable that second time around?
100, yeah. And if you'd have told me we were doing this, I did not know, by the way, that we were doing this. I just had to bring a food. I would have said, no, that's ridiculous. But it actually does make a difference. It was really like, oh, it's depressing to eat this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a challenge for you. We're not going to do it here. This is just a personal for you, and I'm going to check in with you in like a few days to see how it goes. But the next time you eat a Kit Kat or any kind of food that like maybe as a 10-year-old you would have been ashamed of or afraid of or something like that, go back in time and talk to 10-year-old Gem and say those same things you told yourself today, and say those to the 10-year-old before you take a bite. And just, it's like going back in time and repairing any or undoing any kind of damage. Not that time travel is possible per se, but that you can heal those pieces of you, that inner child, so that you can experience like the wholeness that you have now. And it's just a beautiful thing. So would you be willing to do that and let me check in with you?
100%, yeah, 100%.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Gem, for your time. And this has been delightful. Thanks for holding space for my anger coming up. And thanks for eating that delicious Kit Kat in front of us.
I'm sending some.
Good. I'm serious. As soon as we get off, I'm like telling you my address. Yeah. Thank you. Is there anything else that you wanted to share or something before we sign off?
No, I don't think so. Just thanks so much for having me. It's been wonderful. It's been really great.
No, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much. And yeah, I guess, you know what? I'm going to invite anyone who watches this to try the same thing. Like, try it throughout, not just the one time, although I think that's powerful just to try. Interacting with your food in new ways is always powerful. Huge proponent of that. But just see how it feels. And I will say this. Sorry. I will say that for me, I've noticed that, it started out as mindful eating. I'm a yogi and into Reiki, and so I like mindfulness. So for eating, it shifted from, this control and this fear of trying to be healthy, and I shifted into a mindfulness relationship with food. And then that's when I discovered intuitive eating. So I came into it with mindfulness. Then I started playing with intuition as far as it relates to food. And now I'm realizing all of this combined is I'm an intentional eater, and that I get to decide what kind of an experience I want to have with my food. It can be intuitive, it can be mindful, it can be emotional, but I'm intentionally choosing the foods and the type of experience I want to have. And so whoever is watching this,
Right.
as you interact with your foods this week, like practice what Gemma's done and going back and undoing any kind of damage so that you can intentionally choose how you want to experience your food, because it's your body, your choice, always. And that's powerful. So I just want to encourage people to like reclaim that power. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to say. So I'm like, namaste.
That's good.
All right. Okay. I should probably stop because I'll just keep rambling. But thank you, Gem. Thank you, everyone. And yeah. All right.
Thanks so much.